Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I'm here to bring you a battle between the two Fate Reforged Clash Packs deck. Over here is Power and over there is Prophet. Power is the Delve focus deck and Prophet is the Enchantment focus deck. We're playing the best of 3 for these decks and we'll go ahead and get started by drawing our opening hands. Power draws an Island, a Sultai Ascendancy, a Sultai Soothsayer, Satyr Wayfinder, Opulent Palace, Sultai Charm, and Forest. I think there's enough going on here that we can keep this hand. Prophet draws our opening 7. They draw a Commune with the Gods, Dark Betrayal, Forest, Loathsome Catabalpes, Forest, and Brain Maggot. We don't have any black mana, and we don't have any way of finding it, and so I think we're going to have to mulligan this black heavy hand. Our second hand gives us a Swamp, a Forest, a Night Howler, a Forest, Debilitating Injury, Eidolon of Blossoms, and Nyx Infusion. I think that this is a keepable hand. Go ahead and take the Nyx Infusion and put it on the bottom of the deck. Since we forgot to roll off to see who goes first, we'll roll. Prophet rolls a 7. Power rolls a 5. Prophet will opt to go first. Prophet begins by playing a Forest, and Prophet will pass the turn. Power draws, they get a Dismal Backwater. They're going to play the Opulent Palace tapped. This is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it for black, green, or blue. And Power passes the turn. Prophet draws, gets an Oakheart Dryads. We're going to play a Swamp over here, and then Power will pass the turn. Power untaps, draws, gets a Hero's Downfall. Power will play the Forest, and we'll tap both of these and play the Satyr Wayfinder. This is a 1/1 Satyr. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them into your hand and the rest into the graveyard. For the top 4 cards, we have the Necropolis Fiend, Gurmag Angler, Necromancer's Assistant, and a Swamp. We'll put the Swamp into our hand and dump the rest of these 3 into the graveyard. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet draws, gets a Swamp. We will play the Swamp. We'll tap these 3 to cast Oakheart Dryads. This is a 2/3 enchantment creature Nymph Dryad, and whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It'll enter the battlefield and give itself +1/+1, but it has Summon Sickness, so we can't attack this turn, and so Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws, gets another Opulent Palace. We're going to play the Swamp. And then we will tap these 3 to cast the Sultai Ascendancy. This is an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on top of your library in any order. Put it over here. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws a Nemesis of Mortals. Prophet will play a Forest, and then Prophet will tap everything and play the Eidolon of Blossoms. This is a 2/2 enchantment spirit, and whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. As it enters the battlefield, we're going to trigger the draw card effect as well as the +1/+1 effect. We'll draw a card first. This is the Brain Maggot, and then we're going to trigger the +1/+1 effect, making this a 3/4, and then Prophet is going to attack with the Oakheart Dryads. Prophet declines the block. We'll take 3 and go down to 17. Prophet passes the turn. Power untaps. We're going to look at the top 2 cards. We have a Sultai Charm and a Forest. We are going to put the Sultai Charm back on top and put the Forest in the graveyard. We'll draw, take the Sultai Charm into our hand. We will play the Opulent Palace tapped. And then we're going to tap 3 mana, tapping the Opulent Palace for black to cast Hero's Downfall, targeting the Eidolon of Blossoms. This is an instant, destroy target creature or planeswalker. The Eidolon of Blossoms dies. And then Power will attack with a Satyr Wayfinder for 1. Prophet takes 1 and goes down to 19. Then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws a Swamp. We'll play the Swamp. We'll tap 4 mana and cast the Night Howler. This is a enchantment horror with bestow 2 black. This is the mode that we're using, and it says it and the enchanted creature Get +X+X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. It'll enter the battlefield, triggering the Oakheart Dryads, which is bestowed upon. So the Oakheart Dryads is now a 3/4, and then we're going to count the number of creatures and put a die on it to track how many creatures there are. Prophet has 1 creature in its graveyard. Power has 3 creatures in its graveyard. This makes the Night Howler a +4/+4, and so this makes the Oakheart Dryads a 7/8. We'll attack with the Oakheart Dryads for 7. Power cannot block. We'll take 7 to go to 10. Then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. We'll look at the top 2 cards. We have 2 Satyr Wayfinders. At this point, I don't think we need these, so we're going to just dump them both in the graveyard. This increases the power toughness of the Night Howler to 6. Power will play the Dismal Backwater. This is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you gain a life, and you can tap for blue or black. We'll gain a life to go up to 11. And then Power will tap 3 mana and cast Sultai Charm. This says, choose 1, destroy target monocolored creature, destroy target artifact or enchantment, or just draw 2 cards, then discard a card. We'll destroy target enchantment, and that is the Night Howler. The Night Howler has been destroyed. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws a Commune with Gods. We'll pay 4 mana to cast the Nemesis of Mortals. This is a 5/5 snake, and it costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. We have 2 creature cards, reducing the price to 4. And for 7 green, Monstrosity 5, it costs 1 less to activate for each creature card in your graveyard, so it will cost 7 mana to activate. We'll swing with the Oakheart Dryads for 2. Power will opt not to block and go to 9. And then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Looks at the top 2 cards. We have a Swamp and a Sultai Soothsayer. Put the Swamp in the graveyard and the Sultai Soothsayer into our hand. We'll play the island over here, and then we will tap 3 mana, casting another Sultai Charm, this time choosing to destroy target monocolored creature, which is the Nemesis of Mortals. The Nemesis dies, and then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws a Swamp. We'll play the Swamp. Prophet will spend 2 mana and cast Commune with Gods. This is a sorcery. It says reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or enchantment card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. Here are the top 5 cards. We have Reaper of the Wilds, Oakheart Dryads, and Grim Guardian as our enchantments and or creatures that we can choose. The Reaper seems the most strong of this batch, so we'll take the Reaper of the Wilds and then put the rest into the graveyard. Then we will spend 2 more mana and cast Brain Maggot. This is a 1/1 enchantment insect, and when it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand, and you choose a non-land card from it. Exile the card until the Brain Maggot leaves the battlefield. We'll choose Power to reveal their hand. Power shows 2 Sultai Soothsayer, one of which will be exiled by the Brain Maggot. The Brain Maggot has exiled the Sultai Soothsayer. This will also trigger the Oakheart Dryads, making it a 3/4. And then we will also tap the Forest and the Swamp to cast Debilitating Injury, targeting the Satyr Wayfinder. This is an enchantment aura. It says enchant creature gets -2/-2. This will also trigger the Oakheart Dryads, making it a 4/5. The Satyr Wayfinder dies. And Prophet will attack with the 4/5 Oakheart Dryad. Power takes 4 and goes down to 5. Prophet passes. Power untaps. We'll look at the next 2 cards. We have a Dismal Backwater Forest. We'll put them both in the graveyard, and then we'll draw. We get a Merciless Executioner. We will tap 5 mana and cast the Sultai Soothsayer. This is a 2/5 Naga Shaman, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. We have Opulent Palace, Evolving Wilds, and 2 Swamps. We're going to take the Opulent Palace, put the rest over here. Go ahead and play another Opulent Palace, and then we'll pass the turn to Prophet. Prophet untaps, draws a Doomwake Giant. We'll spend 4 mana and cast Reaper of the Wilds. This is a 4/5 Gorgon. Whenever another creature dies, scry 1. For black, it gains Death Touch until end of turn, and for 1 and green, it gains Hexproof until end of turn. We will decline to attack and pass the turn. Power untaps. Looks at the top 2 cards. We have an island and a murderous cut. We'll go ahead and discard the island. We're going to tap 3 mana and cast the Merciless Executioner. This is a 3/1 Orc Warrior. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. We'll sacrifice the Merciless Executioner. Prophet does not want to give back the Sultai Soothsayer, so we'll sacrifice the Oakheart Dryad. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws a forest. We'll play the forest. We'll go to combat and swing with the Reaper of the Wilds. Power does not like the idea of losing the Sultai Soothsayer to the 1 point of death touch here, so we will take the 4 and go to 1. Prophet will tap 5 and cast a Doomwake Giant. This is a 4/6 enchantment giant. Whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, creatures your opponent's control will get -1/-1 until end of turn. This will keep hexproof up for the Reaper, and the Soothsayer gets -1/-1. That has no effect as of right now, and so we will pass the turn. Power's in a tough spot, so we're going to spend 4 mana and use the Delve effect of Murderous Cut, delving away a island. To cast Murderous Cut, this is an instant. It has Delve, and it says destroy target creature. We will destroy the Doomwake Giant because we can't target the Gorgon. The Doomwake Giant dies, and Prophet's turn ends. Power untaps. We look at the top 2, which is Treasure Cruise and Island. We'll dump the island. We'll keep Treasure Cruise, and then we'll draw a card, which is a Herald of Torment. We can't really cast that due to the life loss ability here. So we are going to tap 1 island and exile 7 cards to cast Treasure Cruise. This is a sorcery, it has Delve, and you can draw 3 cards. We'll draw 3. We draw a Forest, a Sultai Scavenger, and a Naturalize. We will spend 1 black mana and then exile 6 more cards to cast the Sultai Scavenger. This is a 3/3 bird warrior with Delve and Flying. We'll play the Forest, and then we will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. We have a Baleful Eidolon. I think we might as well use this. We'll pay 5 mana and cast Baleful Eidolon using its Bestow ability. This is a 1/1 enchantment spirit with Bestow 4 and black. With Death Touch, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has Death Touch. This makes this a 5/6 Death Toucher. And then we're going to attack with the Reaper of the Wilds. This is the point where we're going to offer the trade by double blocking with the Soothsayer and the Sultai Scavenger, because we just need to survive at this point. Prophet accepts the trade, and these will all die. Prophet has nothing else, so they'll go to their end step. At Prophet's end step, Power will spend 2 mana and cast Naturalize, targeting the Brain Maggot. This is an instant. It says destroy target artifact or enchantment. Brain Maggot is destroyed. This will return Sultai Soothsayer to Power. Power gets the Sultai Soothsayer. We're going to look at the top 4 cards of our library. We'll keep the dead drop and then discard the remainder into the graveyard. Prophet's turn ends. Power untaps. Reveals an island and an evolving wilds. We'll put both of those in the graveyard. We'll draw a swamp. We'll play the swamp. The Herald of Torment won't help here, so we will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws a Reviving Melody. We'll go to combat and attack with the Baleful Eidolon. Power blocks the Baleful Eidolon with the Sultai Soothsayer. They will trade. Baleful Eidolon dies, and then we will spend 3 mana and cast Reviving Melody. This is a sorcery. It says return target creature from your graveyard to your hand and or return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. We'll do both. We're going to return the Eidolon of Blossoms to our hand, and we'll return the Reaper of the Wilds to our hand. We'll tap 4 mana and cast Eidolon of Blossoms. We'll draw a card off of its ability, which is the Nyx Weaver, and then Prophet will pass the turn. Power will look at the top 2 cards. We have a Monastery Siege and a Satyr Wayfinder. We'll dump both of these cards into the graveyard. Draw. We have a Forest. That's not helpful. Now we're going to have to use the dead drop because we don't have any way of defending ourselves against the Eidolon. So we will spend 9 mana and exile the Satyr Wayfinder here to cast Dead Drop. This is sorcery. It has Delve, and target player sacrifices 2 creatures. Will target Prophet. Prophet sacrifices Eidolon of Blossoms. Power passes their turn. Prophet untaps. Draws a Grave Robber Spider. We'll spend 4 mana and cast Reaper of the Wilds, and then we'll pass the turn. Power untaps. Look at the top 2 cards. We have a Sultai Banner and a Tigan Scheming. We're going to put both of these in the graveyard. We'll draw. We get a Tigan Scheming. We're going to tap 2 mana and cast Tigan Scheming, which says look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on the top of your library in any order. Looking at the top 5, we have a Neutralizing Blast, Sultai Scavenger, Necromancer's Assistant, and Murderous Cut, and Scuttling Doom Engine. We want the Scuttling Doom Engine the most, and so we're going to dump everything else into the graveyard and then put this back on top of the library. Unfortunately, that's not going to be enough to get us past the Reaper of the Wilds, but we're going to cast the Herald of Torment. This is a 3/3 enchantment demon with bestow 3 black and flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3 and has flying. We're going to cast this hoping that Prophet doesn't recognize that this will kill us the following turn, and then we'll pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws, gets a forest. We'll play the forest. We recognize the Herald of Torment will kill them on their following turn, and if we attack the Reaper of the Wilds, they are going to lose that and survive another turn. And so we are just going to cast for 4 mana the Grave Robber Spider. This is a 2/4 spider with a reach, and for 3 and black, it gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Activate this ability only once each turn. And then we're just going to hold. On Power's turn, they will untap and die to their Herald of Torment. We'll be back for game 2. Round 2, Power draws their opening hand. They get a Naturalize, Swamp, Sultai Soothsayer, Swamp, Sultai Soothsayer, Swamp, and Evolving Wild. I don't really like this particular hand because we can't cast anything but the Naturalize, and I think that's going to be enough for us to mulligan this. Now Power draws a Satyr Wayfinder, Necropolis Fiend, Necromancer's Assistance, Tigan Scheming, Sultai Charm, Despise, and Forest. A 1-lander is also a no-keep, but I guess the Satyr Wayfinder is enough to have me hold out hope that I can draw something else. So we are going to take the Tigan Scheming and stick this on the bottom. And Power will opt to go first. Prophet has a Swamp, Nemesis of Mortals, Brain Maggot, Swamp, Reaper of the Wilds, Forest, and Forest. It's not a great hand, but I think the Brain Maggot into the Reaper is not the worst thing, so we will keep this hand. Power opens with the Forest and passes the turn. Prophet draws a Debilitating Injury. We'll play a Forest, and then Prophet will pass the turn. Power draws a Swamp. We'll play the Swamp. We'll tap both of these, and then cast the Satyr Wayfinder. We'll look at the top 4. We'll take the Opulent Palace, put it into our hands, and then put the rest into the graveyard. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet draws, gets a Loathsome Catoblepas, and then we'll play a Swamp. We'll tap 2 mana and cast the Brain Maggot. It's a pretty good hand, so we'll take the Sultai Charm for now, and then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps, draws, gets a Returned Centaur. We'll play the Opulent Palace tapped, and then we will attack with the Satyr Wayfinder. Prophet declines the block, we'll go to 19. Power will then cast Despise. This is a sorcery. It says target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a creature or planeswalker card from it. That player discards that card. We'll force the Reaper of the Wilds to be discarded. The Reaper of the Wilds is discarded, and then Power passes the turn. Prophet untaps, plays a Swamp, and Prophet doesn't have a lot to do. They're not going to block with the Brain Maggot, so they'll swing with the Brain Maggot for 1. Power takes 1 and goes to 19. Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps, draws a Satyr Wayfinder. We'll swing with the Satyr Wayfinder. Prophet takes 1 and goes to 18. Power will tap 2 mana and cast another Satyr Wayfinder. We'll look at the next 4 cards. We will take the Dismal Backwater into our hand and dump the rest into the graveyard. And then we'll play the Dismal Backwater. This will get us a life to go back up to 20. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws a forest. We'll play the forest. We don't have anything that we can do at this moment, and so we will pass for this turn. Power untaps. Draws a Scuttling Doom Engine. Power will tap out, and then exile 5 cards from their graveyard to cast the Necropolis Fiend. This is a 4/5 demon with Delve and Flying, and for X you can tap it and exile X cards from your graveyard to give target creature -X until end of turn. We'll go ahead and attack with both Satyr Wayfinders. Prophet will decline to block and will take 2 and go to 16. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet draws, gets a forest. We'll play the forest, and then we will tap out and cast the Nemesis of Mortals for 5 mana, thanks to the Reaper being in the graveyard. And then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws a Sultai Soothsayer. We'll spend 3 mana and cast the Necromancer's Assistant. This is a 3/1 zombie. When it enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into the graveyard. We will mill 2 Opulent Palaces and a Sultai Scavenger. And then we will swing with the Necropolis Fiend for 4. Prophet takes 4 in the air and goes to 12. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws a Courser of Crufix. This is actually a pretty good card. We'll spend 3 mana and cast the Courser of Crufix. This is a 2/4 enchantment centaur. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play with the top card of your library if it's a land card. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. We'll reveal the top card. This is a Grim Guardian. It is not a land. So we will play a swamp over here. This will give us 1 life, taking us back up to 13. And then we will tap 2 more mana. Cast Debilitating Injury, targeting the Necromancer's Assistant. The assistant dies. And then Prophet will attack with the Nemesis of Mortals for 5. Power will chump with the Satyr Wayfinder. It'll go to the graveyard. And then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws, gets a Sultai Soothsayer. We'll attack with the Necropolis Fiend for 4. Prophet takes 4 and goes to 9. We'll spend 4 mana to cast the Returned Centaur. This is a 2/4 zombie centaur. When it enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into their graveyard. We'll choose ourselves. We're putting a Hero's Downfall Forest, Murder's Cut, and Forest into our graveyard, which is unfortunate. And then we will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws the Grim Guardian. Reveals the top card, which is a Dark Betrayal. We'll play the Forest, taking us up to 7 mana. We're 1 short of activating the Nemesis of Mortals, but we'll gain 1 life from playing the Forest to go up to 10. And then we will swing with the Nemesis of Mortals again. Power will chump with the Satyr Wayfinder. Then Prophet will spend 6 mana and cast the Loathsome Catoblepas. This is a 3/3 beast. For 2 and a green, it must be blocked this turn if able, and when it dies, target creature opponent controls gets -3/-3 until end of turn. And then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws a swamp. Plays a swamp. Sees that the Necropolis Fiend's days are numbered. So we're going to try to get rid of this Nemesis of Mortals. And so we are going to spend 5 mana and tap the Necropolis Fiend, exiling 5 cards from the graveyard to give the Nemesis of Mortals -X. The Nemesis dies. Then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws the Dark Betrayal. Reveals the top card, which is a swamp. We'll play the swamp, giving us life to go up to 11, revealing the next card, which is Commune with the Gods. And then we are going to pay 1 mana and cast Dark Betrayal, targeting the Necropolis Fiend. This is an instant. It says destroy target black creature. Necropolis Fiend dies. Then we are going to spend 3 more mana and cast the Grim Guardian. This is a 1/4 enchantment zombie with Constellation. Whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Power goes to 19. I guess we have an okay attack here, so we'll spend 3 mana and activate the Loathsome Catoblepas' ability. We'll swing with the Catoblepas and the Brain Maggot and the Courser of Crufix, forcing a block on the Catoblepas. The Returned Centaur must block the Catoblepas, which means 3 damage goes through. Power takes 3 and goes to 16. Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws a Gurmag Angler. That could be what we need to punch through. Increasing the defense with the Soothsayers is probably the best way to go. And it'll also give us better selection, so we'll do that. We'll cast the Sultai Soothsayer. We're going to look at the top 4 cards. We'll take the Sultai Scavenger into our hand, actually. Dump the rest. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws the Commune with the Gods. Reveals the next card, which is a Jungle Hollow. Go ahead and play the Jungle Hollow off the top of the library. This is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, we gain a life. You can tap for black and green. We'll gain a life to go up to 12. And then we'll spend 2 mana and cast Commune with the Gods. We're going to look at the top 5 cards of the library. This is a Vine Weft, Swamp Forest, Forest, and Vine Weft. Obviously, we will dump everything except a forest at this point. Because we can get the Vine Wefts back, we will then dump everything into the graveyard. We're going to spend 5 mana and play the Vine Weft's ability. This is an enchantment aura with enchanted creature. It gets +1/+1/+1, and for 4 and a green, you can return it to the graveyard to your hand. It's back in our hand. We're going to go ahead and tap it, and then stick it on the... Because it enters the battlefield, the Grim Guardian is going to trigger. Power drops to 17. And then we don't have good attacks in this particular case, and so Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws an Evolving Wilds. We'll play the Evolving Wilds, and then we will pay 1 black and exile 5 cards to cast the Sultai Scavenger, and then we will tap the remaining 4 and exile 3 more cards to cast the Gurmag Angler. It's a 5/5 zombie fish with Delve. That sets up our defenses pretty well. We're also going to tap and sack the Evolving Wilds to go grab a forest. Go into the battlefield tapped, then we'll shuffle. Then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws a Dark Betrayal. We'll also flip over and reveal a Swamp. We'll play the Swamp off the top of the deck to gain a life to go up to 13. We reveal the next card, which is another Swamp. We're going to spend 1 mana, casting the Dark Betrayal, targeting the Gurmag Angler. The Gurmag Angler dies. Then we'll spend 5 mana to get the other Vine Weft from the graveyard back into our hand. We'll spend 1 green mana to put that on the Loathsome Catabalpuz. And then we'll spend the remaining 3 mana to make it so that it must be blocked this turn. We'll swing with the Loathsome Catabalpuz. It must be blocked. I don't think we want to lose the Sultai Scavenger, so we will just chump it with the Return Centaur, which will die. And then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws a Sultai Ascendancy. I think at this point, we want to try to finish the opponent off, so we're going to swing with the Sultai Scavenger. This takes Prophet to 10. Then we'll play the Scuttling Doom Engine. This is a 6/6 artifact construct, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And when it dies, it deals 6 damage to target opponent. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws the Swamp. We reveal the top card. It's a Nyx's Infusion. We're going to play the Forest to gain a life to go up to 11. So we're going to pass for this turn. Power untaps. Draws a Typhoid Rats. We are going to swing again with the Scavenger. This takes Prophet down to 8. Then we'll spend 5 mana and cast the Sultai Soothsayer. We'll look at the top 4 cards. And we will keep a Null. Put the rest in the graveyard. And then we'll pay 1 and also play the Typhoid Rats. This is a 1/1 rat with Death Touch. That'll keep the Catabalpuz at bay. And then Power will pass the turn. Prophet draws the Nyx's Infusion. We'll flip this over. We have a forest. We'll play the forest off the top, getting us another life going up to 9. We'll reveal the top is a Swamp. We're going to spend 3 mana to cast Nyx's Infusion. This is an enchantment aura, enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 as long as it's enchantment. Otherwise it gets -2/-2. It'll kill the Typhoid Rats because it's an enchantment that enters the battlefield. Power will lose 1 life. Power goes to 16 and then loses the Typhoid Rats. And then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws a Murderous Cut. We'll spend 1 black and then exile 5 cards. We'll exile these 5. -1 because the Murderous Cut only needs 4 to cast Murderous Cut, targeting the loathsome Catapulpus. Catapulpus dies. All this will go to the graveyard, and then as it dies, it's going to -3/-3 the Scavenger. Scavenger dies. But now we can attack with the Scuttling Doom Engine for 6. Prophet can't block, will go to 3. And then Power will spend 3 mana and cast the Sultai Ascendancy, and then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws the Swamp, reveals the top card, which is an Eidolon of Blossoms. Fortunately, I think it's going to be too late to save us. We'll play the Swamp to gain a life to go up to 4, and then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Look at the top 2 cards, and we will dump Tigan Scheming and keep the Neutralizing Blast on top. We'll draw the Neutralizing Blast. This will protect our engine, and then we will attack with the Scuttling Doom Engine. Prophet can't block and will perish, and we will go to Game 3. Game 3, Prophet will go first. Their opening hand consists of Brain Maggot, Whip of Erebos, Forest, Grave Robber Spider, Doomwake Giant, and Jungle Hollow. I think the Brain Maggot into the Grave Robber Spider is enough to keep this hand. Power draws an Island, Swamp, Despise, Satyr Wayfinder, Forest, Dismal Backwater, and Sultai Scavenger. I think this is a perfectly acceptable hand. We're happy to start with the Despise, and so Power keeps this hand. Prophet will start with the Jungle Hollow. It enters the battlefield tap, will gain 1 life to go up to 21. Prophet passes the turn. Power draws, gets a Naturalize, we'll play the Swamp, we'll tap it, we'll cast Despise. We will ask Prophet to discard their Whip. Whip is discarded, and Power will pass the turn. Prophet then taps, draws a Forest, we'll play the Forest, we'll tap these 2 and cast the Brain Maggot. We will ask to exile the removal spell in the Naturalize. Power gives it the Naturalize, and then Prophet passes. Power untaps, draws, gets a Swamp, we'll play the Forest, we'll tap these 2 and cast the Satyr Wayfinder. We'll take the Opulent Palace into our hand, and then we'll discard these, and then Power will pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws, gets a Swamp, we'll play the Swamp, and then we are in no position to do much else, so we will pass the turn. Power untaps, draws, gets another Satyr Wayfinder. We'll play an Island, and then we'll tap 3 and exile 3 from here, casting Sultai Scavenger, and then Power will pass. Prophet draws, gets an Oakheart Dryads. We'll play the Forest. I think we want to get our defense up for now, so we'll tap out and then cast the Grave Robber Spider, and then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps, get a Return Centaur. We can't really punch through the Grave Robber Spider, so we will hold off on attacks, but we will play the Swamp, tap out, and cast a Return Centaur. We'll mill 4 cards into the graveyard. We'll mill a Typhoid Rat, Sultai Charm, Swamp, and a Null, and then we will pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws, gets a Nemesis of Mortals. We'll play the Forest here. And I think that it's worthwhile to do this, so we'll tap out and we'll cast the Doomwake Giant. This will -1/-1 my opponent's creatures. This kills the Satyr Wayfinder. Can't attack this turn, and so Prophet will pass. Power untaps, draws a Dead Drop. Seems like a good play on this part. We will play the Opulent Palace tapped, and then we'll tap out and exile all 6 cards in the graveyard to cast Dead Drop. Sacrificing the Brain Maggot will give them Naturalize, which will kill the Doom Giant. We need the Grave Robber Spider to block, and so we will sack the Brain Maggot and the Doomwake Giant. This returns a Naturalize. We will swing with both of these. Prophet will block the Scavenger and take 2 to go to 19. Power passes the turn. Prophet untaps, draws a Dark Betrayal. We'll spend 4 mana to cast the Nemesis of Mortals, and then we'll swing with Grave Robber Spider for 2. Power takes 2 and goes to 18. Then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps, draws a Necromancer's Assistant. We'll play the Dismal Backwater tap. We'll gain a life to go back up to 19. We'll go to combat and Swing with the Sultai Scavenger. Prophet taps the Jungle Hollow for black and casts Dark Betrayal, targeting the Sultai Scavenger. Scavenger dies. Power will cast another Satyr Wayfinder. We'll grab the forest here and mill the rest, and then we'll spend 3 more mana and cast the Necromancer's Assistant. We'll mill a Satyr Wayfinder, Swamp, and another Murderous Cut, and then we will pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws a Vine Weft. We'll spend 3 mana and cast the Oak Heart Dryad, which will give the Nemesis of Mortals +1/+1. We'll also spend 1 more mana to put the Vine Weft on the Nemesis of Mortals, making it a 7/7 as of right now. We'll trigger the Oak Heart Dryad again, making it an 8/8, and we'll attack with the 8/8 Nemesis of Mortals. Power will chump with the Satyr Wayfinder. It'll die. Prophet passes. Power untaps. Draws, gets a Hero's Downfall. That's exactly what we wanted to see. We'll play a Forest here, and then we'll spend 3 mana and cast Hero's Downfall, targeting the Nemesis of Mortals. The Nemesis perishes, and the Vine Weft also goes into the graveyard. And then we'll hold and pass the turn. Prophet untaps, draws a Plummet. We have 3 creatures in the graveyard with the Grave Robber Spider. I think that's probably good enough to get swinging, so we'll attack with the Grave Robber Spider. We will let it through. Prophet will decline to pump. Power takes 2, going down to 17. Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps, draws a Swamp. We'll swing with the Necromancer's Assistant. I think that the Dryads are vulnerable to Naturalize, but I think we might be able to win the race with the Vine Weft, and so we're going to take 3 and go to 16. Power plays the Swamp, and we'll go to end step. At the end step, Prophet will tap 5 and then get the Vine Weft back into their hand. In response, Power will tap 2 and naturalize the Oak Heart Dryads. Dryads go down. Power's turn ends. Prophet untaps, draws an Eidolon of Blossoms. We're going to tap 4 and cast the Eidolon of Blossoms. We'll draw. Gets us a Swamp. We'll play the Swamp. We'll tap 1 and cast the Vine Weft, targeting the Grave Robber Spider, making it a 3/5. This will also trigger the Eidolon of Blossoms. We'll draw another card, which is a Swamp. And then Prophet will pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws a Forest. We're going to hold the Forest as a bluff, and then we'll pass. Prophet untaps. Draws a Nyx Weaver. We'll play the Swamp. We'll go to combat and swing with the Grave Robber Spider. Power will again decline to block, and then we'll spend 4 mana and pump the Grave Robber Spider to a 5/6 to a 6/7. Power takes 6 and goes to 11. Prophet will follow up with a Nyx Weaver. This is a 2/3 enchantment spider with reach. At the beginning of your upkeep, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. You can spend 1 black and green to exile it to return a target card from your graveyard to your hand. This will trigger the Eidolon of Blossoms and we'll draw. We get a Leaf Crown Dryad, and then we will pass the turn. Power will draw. We get an Evolving Wilds. Go ahead and play the Evolving Wilds. We'll crack the Evolving Wilds to grab another island. Put onto the battlefield tapped. Shuffle. And then we'll attack with the Necromancer's Assistant. Prophet declines the block and we'll go to 13. Power passes. Prophet untaps. We're going to mill the top 2 cards of the library. We're milling a Dark Betrayal and a Swamp. We'll spend 4 mana to cast the Leaf Crown Dryad. This is a 2/2 enchantment Nymph Dryad with bestow 3 green, which we are using, and reach. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has reach. We're going to put this on the Grave Robber Spider, making it a 5/7. This will also trigger the Eidolon of Blossoms. We'll draw a card. It's a Forest. We'll play the Forest. And then we'll swing with the Grave Robber Spider for 5, threatening to pump it up to a 9. Power chumps with the Centaur. Prophet passes the turn. Power untaps. Draws a Sultai Skullkeeper. We just need chumpers, so we'll go ahead and tap 2. We'll play the Sultai Skullkeeper. This is a 2/1 Naga Shaman. When it enters the battlefield, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. We'll mill the 2, which is a Sultai Soothsayer and an Opulent Palace. It's unfortunate. And then we'll pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws a Reaper of the Wilds. We'll swing again with the Grave Robber Spider. Power chumps with the Skullkeeper. Prophet will tap 4 and cast the Reaper of the Wilds. And then we'll pass the turn. Power untaps. Draws a Neutralizing Blast. Power will pass. Prophet untaps. Draws a Swamp. Play the Swamp. We'll swing with the entire team. Power chumps the Spider. And we'll take 8 damage to go to 3. The assistant dies. Prophet passes. Power draws a Sultai Soothsayer. We'll play the Forest. We'll spend 5 mana. And cast the Sultai Soothsayer. Looking at 4 cards. We'll take the Sultai Ascendancy and bin the rest. We'll spend 3 mana and cast the Sultai Ascendancy, and we'll pass the turn. Prophet untaps. Draws a Debilitating Injury. I believe that this is all we need here. And then we'll swing with everybody for the win. Power will chump with the Sultai Soothsayer, but will die to damage. And that will give the win to Prophet. Prophet certainly went off with the Eidolon with Blossoms, but Power also had flooded in this particular game. And so that is the end of this one. Let me know what you thought about the gameplay in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.